Well, this is a Sunday afternoon, not a time that we usually meet, Pat, but circumstances demand it because I'm going to be going away.
Absolutely, Dr. Collins.
I'm a busy man, you know.
Aren't we all?
I'm restless.
Sunday.
I'm in a restless pursuit of pleasure. So I may be gone for a few days. I mean, what was it said? That Shackleton or somebody at the North Pole? I may be gone for a little while.
Hey, was it Scott or remember the guy?
Scott of the Antarctic. Yeah.
I may be sometime.
There was I always associate that with guys going to the toilet. They leave a room to go to the toilet. I may be sometime. Anyway. Okay, we have a few stories here. Well, we'll discuss them briefly, and we'll try to keep this fairly short because we're short in time ourselves. But there are a number of things that are quite interesting. And one of the things that caught my eye, Pat, I was talking to you about it briefly, was the letters section. I think it was yesterday and the day before in the Irish Times.
Yeah.
And the general heading was, "Are we ready for a United Ireland?" or something like that. Now, Prunchas de Rossa was the one who kicked it off. And he said, really, no way should we be planning for talking about a United Ireland or a border poll. We should be working on the things that Neil Martin has established, getting to be better friends, know each other, and so on. And then maybe at some day, distant date perhaps, etc., we would have a border poll, or we may even have a United Ireland. Well, that prompted two letters that caught my eye. Yeah. One was, well, three actually. One was by Colin Harvey. One was by a woman that I remember well in Jordanstown called Eilish Rooney. And a third one was by a Sinn Féin guy. I've forgotten what his name is now. But they all raised very interesting points. Did you get a chance to read that, De Rossa?
I had a quick glance over it. Like, I know Colin Harvey's position quite well because I've read quite a lot of stuff Colin has done. And I read, by the way, De Rossa's letter is actually a restatement of something he did way back in, I think, maybe May or something, where he again said this sort of thing. But Jude, to answer your question, I have come to the conclusion, and that's not a revolutionary conclusion, but basically, those opposing a border poll are basically in favour of the status quo. It's as simple as that. You know, if you oppose a border poll, you're basically adopting the unionist position. And here's the other thing I'm going to say, because I'll keep it short. If it's okay for unionists to talk all the time about the precious union and about their rights to their Britishness and all the rest, what is the problem or the difficulty or the threat of nationalism saying, look, we want to discuss a border poll? And by the way, Jude, there's no threat from a border poll. If the border poll turns and stays in favour of the status quo, that's it. There's going to be no violence, going to be no... But it's basically saying the democratic rights of those who want Irish unity is subservient or of less important than those who wish to maintain the status quo. And surely in any democracy, if these people are ramming it down our throats that this is that it's threatening, surely it's perfectly legitimate to have a discussion about the future of this island.
Exactly. I noticed you mentioned Prunchas de Rossa, and you said that was a restatement of something you'd said earlier, and you said last May or something. I thought you were going to say that was a restatement of something he said earlier around 1972.
Yeah, it's a position he stayed all. He's basically a sticky, the same as Owen Harris.
Of course, he is an official Sinn Féin man, and they, by definition, say all peaceful means, and you can see the implication behind that.
Yeah,
he's saying we believe in a peaceful path towards a United Ireland. Therefore, unspoken. Therefore, anybody who doesn't agree with me is in favour of something else.
Yeah.
That actually amounts to smearing, I think. However, you also mentioned, Pat, that you feel that you must take into account the people who are being forced into the status quo. The third letter writer, I'm not sure what his name was, but he was a Sinn Féin representative of some kind.
Yeah.
He says exactly the same thing. He says, there's no little irony in Prunchas de Rossa's declaration that a debate on ending partition would be, quotation marks, divisive. He says, as he opposes a border poll in Irish unity, despite such a poll being a key element of the Belfast Agreement, he effectively gives his support to the maintenance of the current status quo, i.e. the continued partition of our country. How divisive is that?
No, Jude, I didn't realize that guy had said that, but Jude, it goes without saying. If you keep saying, Jude, you know the old argument and the debate between the oppressed and the oppressor, silence is on the side of the oppressor. The silence here is on the side of the status quo. If the status quo exists and you oppose any change to the status quo, you're on the side of those who are holding the main beneficiaries. The nationalist people who live in the north have every right or a substantial majority of them to want a border poll. It is a legitimate democratic right, enshrined, by the way, in the Good Friday Agreement. And I love all these people implying that those who want a border poll are dangerous or anti-democratic or threatening or revolutionary or anything. It's the most legitimate aspiration of any democratic society.
But you see the way they've framed it, Pat? They have framed it in a fashion that they say, look, if you keep pressing for a border poll, you're going to upset people. You're going to upset unionism. And if you upset unionism, you're likely to get a loyalist backlash. In other words, violence. So they're hanging this sort of sword of Damocles over the head of nationalists and Republicans. If you do this, there could be violence. Now, take it the other way around. Is anybody saying that if there was a border poll and the nationalist Republicans lost, that there would be violence? No, I don't think so. I haven't heard anybody saying that. So,
but here's the reality. What's his name? Is Professor Nolan? Is it Philip Nolan? The guy has done all the studies of the demographics, and he's reached the conclusion that the unionists are now less than 50% of the population. In fact, they're coming in at 48%. There's of the 4 cities in the north, only Lisburn has now got a unionist majority. It's guaranteed 4 out of the 6 counties have nationalist majorities. Everything is in flux, but seemingly these people want nothing to change, and that the sort of status quo should remain. Almost as if going against what the way the tide is running. They're sort of saying, "Oh, we want to hold back the tide. We don't want to change anything. Don't change anything because it might upset the unions." Right, Jude, if you sort of take their line, "Oh, there might be violence," well, that means democracy is held hostage to the threat of violence, and that is no way for any society to run.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more, Pat. You said it in a nutshell there, because this could go on forever. This could go on forever. We could never have a border poll, which is enshrined, as you say, it's a central part of the Good Friday Agreement. We could never have it because all loyalist unions have to say is, well, we don't like the sound of this at all, and our birthright, etc. So, are you going to hand the veto to them? I don't think that's democratic. And I really think the people in the South, like Andy Pollock is one of them, should be saying again and again, or Prunchas de Rosa again and again, oh, don't get on this. You're only upsetting things. Try to build brotherhood and sweetness and light between the different factions. And then when we've done that, it'll make sense to get out.
I know Andy Pollock, and Andy's definitely a good guy, one of the good guys.
I don't know him.
But I don't agree with him on this. And Andy actually wrote an article a couple of weeks ago, and I read it, and I think it's called Two Irelands, an absolutely brilliant article where he did a very good analysis of what's going on cross-border, in terms of the DUP's behaviour and all the rest of it. So Andy is very aware of what the sense and sensibilities of what's happening in the north.
I think it's kind of interesting too. Maybe we'll leave it at this, Pat. I think it's interesting that this debate, which is quite sharp now in terms of the people who have written in, Andy Pollock, Prunchas de Rosa, Colin Harvey and Eilish Rooney, and then the Sinn Féin guy, that debate, which is, as I say, sharp and has clear lines to it, appears in the letters column. Appears in the letters column.
So, what's the point? What's the point?
Well, the point I'm making is the only one that, as far as I know, I'm not 100% certain of this, but did de Rosa write an article or did he write a letter?
De Rosa wrote, Jude, I'm at a bit of a disadvantage. I read an article De Rosa wrote, I don't know exactly when. It was a sort of major article. I think about it definitely earlier this year, quite a major article. And it must have been a sort of like an opinion piece in the Irish Times or something. Yeah. And I remember Charlie Flanagan come in and said, Charlie Flanagan, the Fine Gael right winger, coming in and praising it, saying he was a rock of common sense and all this sort of stuff. And so when you someone, when I hear Charlie Flanagan or Owen Harris praising something, I know there's something wrong.
Yeah, I think actually he may have done that in May, and this was a letter. I'm almost certain. So that all of this argument, however necessary and however praiseworthy that it's getting some space in the newspaper, it's in the letters it's getting space. It's not in the main part of the newspaper, which is a terrible pity. It says something about the Irish Times' stance as well.
Yeah.
I really think
they won't publish your letters, so what can I say?
Well, I'm not taking it personal, It's just perils before swine, Pat.
Absolutely.
But there's another point about that I wanted to make. What was it?
But no, you're saying there about the fact that it's in the letters and it says a lot about the Irish Times. So what's the point you're making about the Irish Times?
No, there was another. Well, I know that point with them is quite obvious, but there was another little matter. Maybe it'll come back to me at a later point about this this particular matter. Okay, we'll move on to the next one, and maybe my addled brain will resurrect what point I was going to make. Okay, the next one is about a black boy. Now, even using that term, I feel uneasy. Yeah. But that's the term that they use. It's the heading is, it's from the Guardian newspaper. Is time for the black boy clock racism? Is it time up for the black boy clock? Racism row divides Cotswolds town. There's a picture of this black boy, which is 2.5 centuries old. And it was put up there at the time of this slavery. It was at its height in Britain. And it shows a black figure of a black boy, fairly obviously a slave. And some people, particularly a guy of mixed race in this town, is saying, I feel that this really shouldn't be there. That's as it were, a testament to slavery. And, we're past that. So we should, the suggestion is, let's put it into a museum or somewhere else like that. Now, this is a very interesting one because it's exactly the same problem arose, God, it must be about 30 years ago now, down in the University of Cork, UCC. Yeah. They had a statue of Queen Victoria. And somebody was coming, some dignitary was coming, I think it was English maybe. And the question was, would they leave this there? And there was agitation for it to be moved or put in a museum or put in a shed or something. And Professor John A. Murphy was leading the charge against any movement of it. So you talk to people here in Belfast, which is festooned with statues in front of Queen Victoria's, in the front, big, huge statue of her in the front of Belfast City Hall. And there's other statues of all kinds or other worthy English people. Where would you stop? Would you be in favor of removing them? Would you be in favor of leaving them there?
Sure, this is another one of those very mixed views. Like that young fella, by the way, his name is Dan Guthrie. I read the article. Yeah. And it's a place called Stroud. Yeah. And Jude, he said every time he turns the corner of the street where this thing is, it catches his eye. And it's a young black boy tethered, it's only, did you say it's 2 feet height and all the rest?
Well, it's a reasonable size, and it appears to be a reasonable size, but maybe that's a close-up.
Jude, son, I can understand what he's saying. Like, this guy, it's divided Stroud, of course, the local MP, who's conservative. I think
her name is Siobhan something.
Siobhan Bailey, I think.
That's correct. Siobhan Bailey. Interesting.
I think that's her name. And like she's saying this is cancelled culture and it's all the rest of it and so on and so on. But Jude, if she was black, I wonder would she, Jude, it is a horrible thing. Like to come around a corner and you're black and seeing somebody sort of tethered and it's a sort of invocation or some sort of thing about your culture, about where you're from and all that. It's a horrible thing to have. And every time you turn that corner, you see that. But having said that, Jude, you can't unwrite history and you can't unwrite these things happen. But I do agree with whoever suggested, and I think it might have been the Tory MP who said, yeah, but okay, put up maybe some sort of explanation. Let the thing stand, but sort of put it in context and let people know that it was unacceptable. But it happened and it's there. Now, I don't know if that's acceptable or maybe that's just a cop-out.
Okay, here's one for you, Pat. Supposing in Italy, say, there was a statue to Mussolini.
Yeah.
Would you be in favor of keeping it up and add a note of explanation of what kind of man this was?
Well, I'm going to throw one back at you. Would you fancy if you were living somewhere in the Jewish end of London, they put up there was a statue of Hitler and it remained? You know, no, absolutely not.
No, I wouldn't. I would understand people wouldn't want to have they wouldn't tolerate a statue to Mussolini, and if it was there, they would take it down. So at the same time, Mussolini and Hitler were part and parcel of the history of Germany and Italy.
Yeah, but hold on, Dr. Collins. But hold on, Jude. Here's the one question I'll throw at you. That young fella, Dan Guthrie, said, the Guardian report said it's divided the town. The white people are some white people. He says the abuse level is quite high. Why don't you go back where you came from? Basically implying you're black and you're African, going back to Africa.
This is beginning to sound a wee bit like what that last item we were talking about.
Yeah.
Where if you raise the notion of doing something, you're bad, you're creating division, you're stirring up trouble. Keep your trap shut and everything will be okay. In other words, leave it the way it is. Now, I've just cited 2 instances where we wouldn't for a moment tolerate a statue to Mussolini or a statue to Hitler. Yeah. So why are we going along with other statues?
Yeah,
which people don't really want.
The one, Jude, but Jude, you see, there's this problem I have, this unwriting of history. Jude, the history's there. And I think, and to sort of say that it didn't happen is a bit. Now, remember, Jude, was it?
Pat, that's not fair. It isn't a question of saying it didn't happen. It's a question of whether or not you want to take down these statues.
Yeah, well, okay, all right then. If you're going to ask me as stark as that, I would say, take them down. It's like the one Colson, is it Colson, the slave trader in Bristol? Yes. In Bristol. It was pulled down by Black Lives Matter activists last year, wasn't it?
Yes.
And there was all sorts of controversy about it and all the rest. But Jude, I don't think we should be eulogizing or paying tribute to people who were slave traders or people who were hangmen or people who, right, let's do the people who did the health service, like Nye Bevan, or what he called the nursing, the woman who founded the nursing, or some of the good people, and say we shouldn't have role models that are scumbags.
Well, my view would be that if you have statues up, that is saying something about the society. This society believes that this is somebody worthy of note. Now, in this case, it's a slave boy. And they're saying, not that the slave boy is worthy of note, but presumably the guys who organized the slavery are people of note, worth. And that's not just simply true. So I would be I think I'm always astonished at how easily most nationalists and even Republicans accept the fact that Belfast is peppered with statues, street names, halls. God, no, you couldn't move. But there are testimonies or reminders.
Derry is 75% national city, as the same. Nelson Drive, Balmoral Avenue. Can't even remember the rest, and that's just off the top of my head.
Is Governor Walker still there?
Jesus, no, he's gone.
The statue to Governor Walker. Well, I remember I used to walk past that when I'd be going out to the dentist. So how come? Why was that taken away? That was a fine big statue.
I don't know. But I think I don't know whether it would have lasted much longer.
Well, there you are. You see, that's is it terrible?
By the way, you're not making the assumption it's gone. You asked me a question. I can't honestly answer. I'm pretty certain it's gone, but I wouldn't be.
Do you think if it isn't gone, it should be gone?
Jude, something definitely.
Yeah. Well, you see,
we shouldn't hold up people who represent something that it's inimical to the interests of the people of the area.
Well, I was in Dublin, living in Dublin at the time when Nelson's Pillar was blown up.
Yeah.
And I remember the middle class academics tutting and saying it was disgraceful and it's part of our culture and part of our history, and they really are vandals and so on. Uh, you know, I would say the vast majority of Dublin people, ordinary Dublin people, are bloody glad it's gone. And to keep it there is almost to say, well, we put him in the same level as at the other end of the street, Daniel O'Connell.
Yeah, but one thing you have to remember, Dublin was a very Protestant and unionist city.
Yes, that's
up
right.
until nearly the turn of the last century.
Yeah,
and they had wasn't it known as the second city of the empire?
right,
And then that phrase "beyond the pale," those inside the pale sort of had unionists, pro-British, West Brit sympathy, and there's a legacy of that to this day.
I mean, that supports my very point that you know that's the past. Nobody's saying it didn't happen, but that doesn't mean that we're going to have things that honor these people who did things or were part of an empire that was not really wanted in Ireland. And the same thing applies, I think, to this testimony to slavery. And certainly I would say the same thing about the statues, many of the statues, and even place names in Belfast. Now, I know practically nobody, including most of Sinn Féin, would agree with that, because they feel they'd be stirring up a hornet's nest. But, you know, in Dublin, they moved fairly smartish to change the names. O'Connell Street was Sackville Street at the time of the
and I just was that wasn't Dunleary was Queenstown, wasn't it?
You know, and Cove, Cork, and all the rest. So it's clear that these people realise that keeping these names says something about the society that is living at that time. Why don't they apply it to today? I honestly think that we really shouldn't simply accept what has happened and say, oh, well, that was the past, and let's add to it anything. That's what some people say. Oh, let's add a few things in Belfast City Hall, which just reeks, and Stormont, reeks of unionism. Every turn you take, there's a testimony to unionism of some kind. But the nationalists and Republicans will say, well, we're adding a little bit of our side. But I don't think that makes sense. The little bit that's added for nationalism or republicanism or Irishness is tiny in Belfast anyway, compared to what's there for unionism or Britishness.
By the way, we're getting back to Andy Pollock, because you just said something. Andy Pollock, in that article that I read, I think it's To Ireland, he said, if unionism had been smart, he says there will never be a unionist majority again, but there could be a majority for the union, which is a very different thing. And he says by getting soft Catholics to vote. But he says instead of reaching out, as Peter Robinson has suggested, he says it almost seemed as if the DUP had gone out of its way to swagger and to abuse, deriding the Irish language, funding paramilitaries. And he says the swagger of majoritism. Remember during the pro-Brexit talks or the Brexit talks, the way the DUP swaggered around as if to say what the Nationalists want don't count one iota with us. We're in power now and we're going to go for everything that we can get. Jude, that's what you're talking about when you're talking about societies where one side takes everything and everybody's left, you know, the rest. Look at your black boy. Does that symbolize, they're basically telling the coloured people who live in that Stroud area, look, your sensitivities really don't matter. Is that what we're being told?
Well, I think we should be prepared. If we're going to be concerned about something in England, we should be at least as equally concerned about stuff in Ireland, north or south. But we're not. We're not. I put it to you again, Pat. Are you in favour? Would you favour the changing of street names, the removal of statues to people who were no friend of Ireland's?
If it's blunt as that, I would absolutely. I don't think we should have places named Balmoral Avenue that have serial connection. You know, like in Derry, they can see the Donegal Hills. If they said Donegal Hill Street or, you know, or whatever, you know, Foyle Road or something, you know, well, they're already a Foyle Road, what am I saying? But Jude, no, it should reflect, you know, like Jude, look at even a place like Strand Millis. I thought that for years was a great English name. It actually means sweet stream. What is they say that we cannot name our own places instead of Victoria Place, Queen Elizabeth Street, you know, Nelson Drive, Balmoral Avenue? Like, where's the connection to the native Irish place?
But I tell you, Pat, if anybody suggested that in public, well, I'm suggesting it now in public. If enough people look at this video who don't approve of us, we'll be getting hell for it.
No, but if we live on a street and there's a plebiscite, I'd say there's on a street in Belfast and there's 300 people live on it. I'm making this up. and 70 or 60% says we're in favour. I think that plebiscite should hold. I am not denying any. If you live in Portadown, you want to call it Queen Victoria Street, go ahead. If you live in Ballymena and want to call it King Arthur's Road, go ahead. Like you're entitled to do that as if you're in a majority, a legitimate majority. But what you're not entitled to do is ram it down somebody else's throat.
I'm not sure about that one, that particular argument.
No, I could see you not.
I agree with you, Pat. I agree with you. But the fact is that Cotswold town, that young black guy, or not black guy, mixed race, I think, who objected to it, he is very much in the minority. There's very few. Most of the people in the town are white.
Yeah.
So if you go by majority, then that's that you should stay.
Yeah.
And actually,
but that was not comparing quite like. But it's quite obvious you shouldn't have a statue of a tethered black guy in the 21st century.
Well, like I say, it's a historical. You know,
we were chatting about changing place names.
He's not really tethered, you know. He's all right. There's a wire around his neck, but that's only to stop the thing falling into the street. It's a.
I think your guy said it symbolized in a way, a strange way, that the fact that it was tethered like that, you know.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's more important than we know, or than we're prepared to acknowledge anyway. Because if you say all these symbols and statues that represent Britishness in Ireland. If we say all of these are normal and fine, and if you start taking them down or suggesting taking them down, you're stirring the pot and you're going to provoke loyalism. We're back to the same argument we were in.
But hold on. There's one thing you have to put on the record. I want to put on the record anyway. Like unionists, if you're a unionist and you have certain symbols, fair enough. You're entitled to it. I'm not going to take them, but I don't like this. No, that's sort of that crumbs from the table that you're talking about that has been suggested. Oh, the City Hall in Belfast, it's all unionists. So I'll put up a wee window pane, you know, and says, with a wee bit of Irish, and said, look, we've looked after you. In other words, we've got 99% of the slices of the loaf. Here's one slice for you.
Well, how would you remedy that? I
don't know, Joe. I really don't know. No, by the way, I also accept the fact that they're changing the past is very difficult.
We're not changing the past.
Hold on, Jude. You can't simply obliterate and sort of take everything away and say, "Hey, now this is a new dispensation. Everything's changed." Like that. That in a way is a recipe for disaster.
Well, let me put it like this: why do we have statues? Why do we name places after people? It's to honor them.
Yes.
Right? That's saying this society honors these people.
Yeah.
Now, if that society doesn't honor those people, why are those statues and place names still there?
Well, yeah, well, you know, they're there quite obviously to use your own phrase to honor those people. You know, when I go through my own hometown of Letterkenny, I see Charlie Collins Drive. I saw Bernard McGlinchey Way. I see the town park named after Bernard McGlinchey and all the rest of it. But in Northern Ireland is different. There's a very disputed culture.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And therefore, there shouldn't be symbols and statues and street names that actually are, well, in some cases offensive, but certainly they do not reflect the culture of the majority of people living in Belfast.
No.
The same applies, I mean, many other towns throughout the north.
Yeah, but you see, the problem is much more acute in the north than it would be. Dublin might be the last sort of place, and maybe some of the, I mean, like as you said, Cork, and I don't think there's too many in Galway. The last time I looked, there's Padraig O'Connor or someone in this Ayr Square, the boy with a donkey. But
it's it's a very interesting. I suppose it's something we should think about more and maybe come back to again, Pat. I just find this notion where people say cancel culture and reshaping the past. I find that just offensive and inaccurate. Nobody's trying to change the past. Nobody's trying to say that there wasn't certain things happened in Ireland. But we're saying what people, what movements, what events do we honor and what events do we not honor?
I agree with you. That's fair enough. But the problem is that when you take that away, then are you denying other people who have a history here and a culture here their say?
That's exactly the same argument that was being used for not having a border poll.
No,
Jude,
it
is,
you know.
That's no, I don't agree. You know, you're denying.
No. In other words, if I take everything away from a unionist, like they can't get that back. Like in other words, we stop. If you're a unionist and you live down Shankill Road, are you not entitled to say, we want this name Queen Victoria Street to stay?
No, I'm talking about. Let's start with City Hall, right? That's a microcosm, if you like, of the city. All the strands of opinion and views, political views, are there. The majority of them are not unionist, we're told. So why is City Hall stuffed with unionist emblems? And the same thing applies to Stormont, of course, even more so.
When they come, walks past what they call the statue, everybody goes past that, right, dominating the hall and Stormont. Why isn't there one of James Connolly or somebody in the hall the same as?
Well, everybody. Well, you see, James Connolly, in a way, Pat, I'm not saying it's a cop-out, but it's not quite what I'm getting at. Because if you see James Connolly, you can say, "Oh, I'm putting him there because he was a socialist." I'm not putting him there because he was an Irish revolutionary. I'm putting him there because he was a socialist.
Well, I was putting him there because he was an Irish revolutionary.
Well, how about Patrick Pearse then?
All right, Patrick Pearse. Connolly has got connections with Belfast, didn't he?
He has.
He lived in Belfast for a while, sure. And
I'm sure there's more than him. There's got connections as well. But in any case, I just would be fearful that the reason we don't do anything about it is exactly the same reason as we don't have a border poll or people talking about it. And that is, it might upset certain unionists to the point where they make it violent. Now, that's a bad way to run a society, in my opinion. Anyway, okay, I think we've kicked the guts out of that one. Who would have thought a black boy would have taken us so far away from home? Okay, the last one is just a thought that came to mind, Pat. This is Sunday, and we usually don't talk on Sunday.
Yeah.
But Sunday in Belfast, certainly, since I came to live here in the late 70s, has changed dramatically. I mean, there used to be a pub open, there used to be a shop open, and now most shops are open from 1 o'clock at least, and pubs are open. I mean, it's a society where Sunday, in many instances, could be just any day of the week. Now, some people say that's great because Sunday was a drab, depressing, nowhere open, depressing day. And I agree with that. I do feel cheered up when I see people going shopping and so on. On the other hand, maybe we need a break. Leave aside religion, maybe we need a break from being active consumers all the time.
Yeah. Jude, when I was 15, I got a job working in a pub in Letterkenny. Sunday was one of the busiest days of the week. In fact, it was the busiest day of the week. And know who the vast majority of the customers were? People from Derry and Strabane. Because couldn't get a drink. And I'm talking the late 60s, early 70s. And because the pubs in Derry and Strabane were shut and everybody went out and came across the border into Donegal and so on. Right, fast forward, whatever it was, 30 years, 20 years, I went to Australia. And I remember on a Saturday afternoon, I looked around this wee town. Everything was closed. I mean, everything. And I said to the guy, what do you call it? What's going on here? He says, "Oh, we shut up shop. Everything at 1:30 or 1 o'clock on a Saturday, the place, and everybody heads to the beach and all." They had the right work-life balance in the sense that nobody was asked to work over the weekend. Now, Jude, I presume all that's changed. This was way back in 1989. And I remember sitting thinking, this is a very good society, in the sense that, people weren't being asked to work weekends and so on. In other words, if you wanted your petrol, you got it before 1 o'clock on the Saturday. If you wanted your milk, whatever. But the whole idea was we took a break from consumerism. You went out and enjoyed your life. There were proper terms and conditions for workers. It was and I remember thinking, now Rupert Murdoch, he broke all that. He broke the trade unions. So I presume all that's changed. But those are two examples. Jude, we have 24/7 society now, and you put on your blinking Alexa there, and you can hear you can listen to any news station in the world. It's 24/7, 365-year society we're living in now.
Well, you're saying, in fact, that we should really be going back to the way Belfast, I'm talking about Derry or wherever, as it was in the well, up to the end of the
No,
70s.
no. What I'm saying is we need a break from consumerism. I don't think this is good. Dude, what about the rights of workers? At one stage, you used to get double time, a time and a half for working Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of casual workers are told you just take 2 days off, another Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. You get no extra time. And I remember Dunn Stores. I remember there was a massive big argument. And this is an organization who were making millions a year, and they were refusing to pay women who to come in to do, who were mainly the people who worked on the shop floor on the Sunday. And some of the women said, look, we have young kids, and who's going to make they're off Saturday and Sunday, obviously, because they don't go to school. Who's going to look after them? Who's going to make their dinner and all the rest? And basically Dunn Stores back then said, that's not our problem. So the whole thing, there's a whole issue about the rights of workers. Jude, the rights of workers, and it's a subject we're not going to get into now, and under this Tory government and under the various trickle-down economics, has changed dramatically and for the worse.
Well, that's a bigger, well, it's an equally big question, but I would just focus very briefly on the Sunday itself. I agree with some of the things you're saying, and I would quite like us, the notion of a society sitting down for a while and just stopping running all the time. On the other hand, I have to say, when I think back to when driving through Belfast, back in the 70s, 80s, early 80s, God, it was depressing. It really was depressing.
I agree with that too. But Jude, I was over in Derry, over on the water side, about 2 Sundays ago, and Jude was like a Tuesday afternoon or a Wednesday afternoon. The place was packed. We were over at one of them shopping centres. Rosie had to get something, but the car park was full. A Sunday morning.
Maybe I was thinking, it might be because there's a certain sort of blurring of the line between work and pastimes or leisure.
Yeah.
Dare I say it? Because I would do stuff, I regard Sundays just the same in terms of work that I would do, writing I would do.
Yeah.
Or talking to you.
Yeah.
Right? I wouldn't hesitate for a moment. And in fact, to be honest with you, it brightens my day a little bit. God help me.
God help me.
So I think there's a lot of people, they say, oh, guys, they go off and they've got their phone or they've got their tablet or whatever, and they're still, contacting work even on their holidays.
Aye. But remember that golden era? Now, I'm talking obviously about pre-COVID. What about going off fishing? What about going off on a family picnic? What about going, watch a soccer match or a Gaelic match? In other words, taking time out, maybe with your family. Now, half the time, or maybe daddy's working or mommy's working on Saturday or Sunday, or there's some member of the family. At one stage, there was family time. Now, I agree with you. Jesus, I remember going through Derry years ago, Jude, and everything shut up. It was depressing. It was like a ghost town. There was nothing nice about that. So you're right. There's pros and cons, but it's like everything, Jude. After a time, the smart people should be able to sort of evolve the rules and the guidelines which are best for society, not which is best for business.
What about best for the individual?
That's what I mean.
For example, Pat, you did some work today earlier this morning. You were telling me, right? Some writing work. Now, did you feel that you'd be better not having done that? Do you feel better? No, feel better having done it?
It has to be in by lunchtime tomorrow. So the risk is if anything happens tomorrow morning, I won't get it done.
Yes.
So I always do it on a Sunday morning.
But I'm asking you, do you feel better having done it?
Absolutely.
That's my point. And many of us we're lucky enough to have the kind of work we enjoy.
Back up, Dr. Cons, back up. That was my choice. When I'm told to come in to work to Dunn Stores or Marks and Spencer's or Aldi or Lidl, that's their choice.
Aye, that's right. Well, there are jobs, of course. I totally agree with you. There are jobs that people hate, dislike intensely. There are jobs that people dislike, but they are happy enough with them because their mates are there and they've got company that they enjoy. But there is work that is just horrible, and people don't want to have anything to do with it. And they'd welcome a Sunday blank of work. But I'm saying there's work that people do that actually they enjoy doing. And you've essentially admitted to me, and I'd be the same, that you enjoyed doing the work you did earlier today and felt satisfaction from having done it. And you would have had a less enjoyable day if you hadn't been doing it.
Absolutely. Like I write my column for this. Let me get the plug in for the
Yeah.
Daily Mirror on a Sunday morning.
Yeah. And don't you feel
Yeah.
good afterwards?
Absolutely.
There you
Like
are.
every word is a gem.
But Pat, I want to finish now on this. You're thinking of yourself all the time. You've got to think of the terrible things that will happen when people read it. See how awful they will feel. Okay,
Hey,
Pat.
Jude, I'll leave you with this one. I got it was a wee girl. She's a cousin of mine. She emigrated to England years ago. Anyway, and we're not having a discussion about this. I'm just throwing it out. She sent me a thing last night. She only sends me when Liverpool won. She's a Liverpool fanatic. Anyway, she sent me this thing. By the way, Pat, she says, Liverpool, Manchester United, great ones today. By the way, I hate women pundits. Good luck, Jude.
Oh, that is dangerous. Did you watch the match incidentally yesterday? The GAA match?
No,
Mayo
Jude,
versus
here,
Dublin?
I have to, Jude, and I swear to God, this is an honest reason. I didn't bother watching it because I said to myself beforehand, I'm not going to watch Dublin beating Mayo again. And because I just can't stand Dublin winning every time. It annoys the hell out of me because I think it's so unfair. The resources, the time, the effort, the medics, everything. Dublin gets $1.5 million a year. Somebody like Carlo gets 100,000 or less, and that annoys the hell out of him. And the last thing I expected was Mayo to win.
Who's sorry?
I thought Mayo was going to win. Joe would have watched it.
Well, I watched it. I was forced to watch it at gunpoint. In our house, you have to do that kind of thing, you know. But oh God, it was so exciting. It really was one of the most exciting, one of the most amazing comebacks. Having said that,
Actually, I'm really sorry. I must have, and I mean genuinely sorry. But just shut up. I'll have to be honest. I thought Dublin's going to walk us again, and I'm buggered if I'm going to watch and sit and watch them doing it again. I've sat and watched Dublin Mayo on about 10 occasions for a couple of hours, and every time Dublin won.
They went in at half time. It's Dublin 6 points up or 7 points up, maybe.
And I thought to myself, yeah. In fact, I was looking up the score, and Dublin were leading, and I actually said to Rosie, Dublin's winning again.
The end of an era. End of an era.
End of an
Okay,
era.
Pat.
Good luck.
Get back to work now.
Good luck,
Get back to work. This is
Thanks,
Sunday. Get
Jim.
back to work immediately.